Hello and welcome to week 4. I think this is more of a fun week for you guys. You've done all the hard stuff, getting the controllers to work, and now we can just play music, get in the zone, and paint weights or assign paint weights via a chart. Thank you so much for all of the emails that I've been getting about the last assignment. I understand there were a lot of controllers that they were looking for, some of which weren't quite necessary to get the animation that we're looking for. So I'll be grading your assignments over the next couple of days and be in touch with you guys to make sure that you have all the actual needed ones. As always, you guys are doing great with the discussion board, so please keep that up. And let's take a look at what this week is asking for. So just for the sake of this example and me showing you, I'm going to hide my controllers. I have them in a layer. I just want it to be simple for you guys to actually see what's going on. So we've got our skeleton and our mesh, and now we're going to bind them together. So quite simply, you're going to grab the root of your joints, hold shift, and grab your mesh. And we're going to make sure we're in our rigging drop down, and we're going to go to skin, interactive bind skin. You can hit the option box next to it if you want, but the default settings are kind of what we're going to deal with anyway. So you can hit OK. Now what's going to happen when you hit OK is you're going to get these capsules. And if you look in your menu bar over here, you can see a new menu button that looks like a capsule. You can always double click that to open up the tool settings. Now, this is where labeling your joints becomes a big deal because we can actually click through these, and you can see in my viewport it's showing the capsule around whichever one I've clicked on. Now, dealing with these capsules, it's important, but it's not like an end-all be-all. You can't just use the capsules and call your character rigged. But let's see, which one do I want to deal with, for example. I guess let's do this hip. So if we look here, I've got my hip joint selected. You can see the difference. If I scroll down, I can go to the knee and see what's going on. Now, whatever is red is going to be fully affected, and then we get the fall off to blue, which is what's least effective. So you can always click on the capsule and click and drag to show more of what's happening. Now when you see something like this, that's just a vertex that doesn't know what it's attached to, so it's kind of freaking out. So you don't need to adjust too much. If you're getting that error, I would just move it back. But the edge of the capsule, you can move up and down. This ring, you can expand or compress. But I would just kind of go through these, just adjust a little bit. Don't spend too much of your time looking at these, but make some adjustments because they're set to be big. And we have enough joints here that we don't need all of that to affect so much of our mesh. When you've got your shoulder, it's going to affect between the shoulder and your back or neck and to your actual elbow. It's not going to really affect, if I move my shoulder, you don't really see any skin move by your wrist. So having this be so long is really unnecessary. So make sure you're actually going through these and really adjusting. I'm not going to just for the sake of this lecture because I think it makes pretty much sense. So we'll move forward. Once you click off of it, you can hit like W for your move tool. That sets it. You can always click back on the capsule tool if you want it. So now let's take a look at what actually binding our mesh has done. You can see, awesome, it moves. That's our main point. We want to make sure that we can actually move our joints that we created and it moves the mesh. Now, you can see with the capsules here, don't forget F on the keyboard focuses in. When I move my shoulder, look how much the neck is moving, and we get this like sharp line here where we've got movement and then nothing. Right? That's not very realistic. I can move my shoulder all day and it's never going to affect my chin in real life. So we need to start adjusting. So now that we have our skin bound, there are two kind of different ways that we can fix any of the errors that we're seeing in here. One is painting weights, and the other is more of a mathematical chart. So let's take a look. If you select your mesh, and we can go to Skin, Paint Skin Weights, you'll notice that we've got our mesh is changing color. You can click on this Paint Weights tool to bring up the menu. Double click, that is. Now we can see whatever joint we're on, white is showing what's affected. The middle gray is showing, the fall off, and what's black is not affected. So, for example, the shoulder. We've got paint. These are your different brushes. You can have a nice blurred brush, soft brush, solid or hard brush. But if I wanted to, I can just click and paint on all these vertices. If you guys have a tablet or anything like that, this is a good point to use it. But just as an example, for me painting, now if I hit W or get my rotate tool, you can see what's now affected. I'm getting a lot of movement in the mesh. So that's kind of what you're doing with painting here. I'm going to turn this to my perspective view real quick so we can see a little bit more. You're obviously not going to want that much selected for the shoulder, but we can always hit Control on our keyboard to remove. And you're going to play around with this opacity and value section to get that kind of in-between or fade. So, we really want to clean this up. You want to look at all different views because you're actually grabbing different vertices, and that's what you're painting. You're painting on each vertex. Okay? So, to show you kind of what I'm getting at, I'm going to show you the other way using one of our editors. And you can kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I'll paint a little, then go in and use some math, then adjust and go back and forth. So we're going to look at our component editor here. Let me get our mesh set up. So we're going to go to Windows, and then, where is it here? General Editors, our component editor. Alright, and I'm going to make this big for a second, but normally while you're in it, you want to keep it pretty simple here. So you can see we've got a bunch of different options here. I'm going to actually go into my mesh, right mouse click and hold, and go into vertex mode. And you can actually select vertices. So maybe I'll click on all of these ones because I know that I don't want, if I move my elbow or my shoulder, I really don't need any of my mesh to be pulling up along with it. So we'll go back into the component editor here. And when I do select vertices, it pulls up my smooth skin tab. And you can see that actually each vertex is numbered. And then you can also see all of the joints that are actually affecting these vertices. Takes a little bit of time to get used to looking at this editor, but you want everything to add up to 1, right on the dot, 1, 0, 0. So you can see here we've got over 1, way under 1. Becomes a little bit of a confusing thing. So let's make this a little bit smaller so we can see what we're dealing with. And let's not forget that I selected all of these. So you really want to think about, okay, well, what should affect these? And it's actually going to probably be this, back and chest joint that I have here. You can say that, some higher up, the shoulder might, the waist, it's a little bit far down. So, if you think maybe you have too many selected, let's keep it simple. So these are being weighted here to my back, my shoulder, and my chest. So these 3. So you want to kind of take into account. For me, these ones are going to be fully weighted to the back. So let's, for an example, select the shoulder, and I'll show you what happens when I weight them all to the shoulder. So you can actually click and drag, and then I'm going to type in 1 and hit enter, and that brings them all to 1. I can also click and drag over here, hit 0 and hit enter. That puts those all to 0. So now each of these vertices right here are 100% or 1 weighted to the shoulder. So what does that look like? Well, we can go into object mode. I'll click my shoulder, and when I go to rotate that shoulder, you can see now all those vertices are weighted to the shoulder. So we know that's not quite what we're looking for. So I'm going to 0 all of these out. So I'll just click and drag, hit 0. Oh no, but now they're not weighted to anything, and you can see that they jumped who knows where, way down to the 000 mark. So we want to go to Options in our component editor, uncheck Hide 0 columns. Now this will show you every joint, so you can decide what you want to weigh it to. And I think I said that I wanted these to go to the back. So I'll hit 1 and hit enter. So now when we go into object mode on our skeleton, we can see if I rotate the back, these go nicely with it. All right? So now becomes the issue of kind of deciding, okay, well that makes sense, it's 100%, but what about if I'm looking at my arm here, you know, what about some vertices in the middle here? You know, should these vertices be weighted, you know, let's take these 2 for example, or 3. Should these be to the elbow, to the wrist? It gets a little confusing. So I like to hide my 0 columns so that I can just see this one these aren't even weighted at all to my wrist here. They're to the elbow and to the shoulder. So I'm going to start by saying no to the shoulder, and then I do have to bring back to get my wrist, and this is the left. And these are in alphabetical order, so. Now I'm going to try a 50-50 breakdown since these are right in the middle. So I'm going to do 0.5 to the wrist, and then I'll hide my 0 columns, go to the elbow, type in 0.5. So now you can see, we'll go into object mode to select our actual joints. Like, oh, okay, well, that's actually getting pretty crazy. That doesn't happen. And let's see. You won't really be able to bend your arm this way, but, you know, all right, that's fine. So maybe those actually need to be more to the elbow. So we can select, oops, go back into vertex. We can select those vertices again, and I might say, you know what, to the elbow, I want these to be 0.75, and for the wrist, I only want these to be 0.25. So this is what you're going to keep doing, and you can do them in chunks. You know, once you've done some painting and dealing with the capsules, you won't have to start from scratch with any of this, but it's about kind of seeing where you want things to be positioned and how you want them to move. So, you know, like, well, that's still too much movement. We don't want it to go crazy like that. So you can go into vertex mode and make it even less. So, you know, this could be 0.9 and this could just be 0.1. Okay, so you can play around with it until you find what you like. You might even be saying, you know what, Jen, I'm moving my wrist right now and the muscle moves, but it's not really the mesh. And that's what we're faking. We're kind of faking that there is a muscle under here. So that's what you want to pay attention to and say, okay, well, if I can get that to move a little bit, you know, put your finger over your forearm and move your wrist and see what happens. So you do want a little bit of weight to be assigned, probably just 0.05. But you'll go through that, doing that with your whole model, and then, you know, just be crunching numbers or painting using the capsules, all of that, and then you'll be turning in a nicely bound mesh to the skeleton. Alrighty, let me know if you have any questions along the way. I'll talk to you guys